What's going on YouTube? I'm here to talk to you all yet again about another important topic, and this one's a little bit controversial, but hear me out. First time steroid cycles and why I think the traditional recommendation of 500 or even 600 milligrams of testosterone a week is a stupid approach for a first cycle, and I'm going to offer a better alternative. So let's dive into the video right now. If you look online anywhere, you're going to find copious amounts of information on online bodybuilding forums, online steroid forums, and unfortunately the majority of it's crap. A lot of it's just regurgitated information from gym bros that have been railing gear since their early teens, and they're just offering their 2 cents based off of what they've read or what they've been told that others run. Not only that, usually it's just anecdotal garbage fed to them from gym bros in their era when they first started lifting, and it doesn't really have much of a foundation or much bearing in actual pharmacology practices. So I'm going to address a pretty important study that we have from the early 2000s, and it's probably the only decent piece of literature that we have on supraphysiological doses of testosterone, and I'm going to use that to form the basis of my argument. So reason number 1, it's excessive. You don't need that much to grow. If you needed 500 to 600 milligrams of testosterone to grow, you've either got terrible genetics, you've got a terrible response to drugs, or you're just not training hard enough and your approach to nutrition is terrible. All 3 of which do not validate using 500 to 600 milligrams of testosterone a week for your first time cycle. The typical male endogenously or naturally produces 35 to 70 milligrams of testosterone a week. Now, if you were to go from that and start injecting 500 to 600 milligrams of testosterone a week, you're not doubling, you're not tripling, you're not quadrupling, you're literally multiplying your testosterone levels by 7. That is far more than what's required. So if you're aiming to get supraphysiological rates of muscle growth, all you need to do is double or at the very most triple your natural production, and you're going to see very good results. So if you were, say, at the high natural end, now factoring in the weight of the ester that you get with testosterone enanthate and testosterone cypionate, that equates to roughly 300 milligrams of testosterone a week. Now, to support this claim, I'm going to reference a study that I mentioned a little bit earlier in the video, which is probably the only decent piece of literature that we have when it comes to looking at the effects of supraphysiological dosages of testosterone in young males. So the 2001 study analyzed 5 control groups, each receiving a different weekly dosage of injectable or exogenous testosterone. They were as followed. Group A was receiving 25 milligrams of testosterone a week. Group B was receiving 50 milligrams of testosterone a week. Group C was receiving 125 milligrams of testosterone a week. Group D, 300 milligrams of testosterone a week. And Group E, 600 milligrams of testosterone a week. They had 61 participants in total. 54 ended up completing it all the way through. 1 participant dropped out due to severe testosterone-induced acne. The other 6 were unable to meet the requirements. So this study went on for 16 weeks, and all participants were eating roughly the same, nutritionally speaking, in terms of total calories, protein, carbs, and fats relative to their body weight and energy requirements. Each followed the same training regimen. When a study does this, it is referred to as a controlled study because they're controlling all variables and factors which might contribute or elicit any sort of change in the results. So they do this to try see how much changing one variable will impact the results. In this case, the one variable is testosterone levels or androgen levels. They tested all of the participants' endogenous testosterone levels, total and free testosterone, their luteinizing hormone, and IGF-1 levels at week 0, and then they did a follow-up test at week 16, the final week of taking the exogenous hormone. Group A and B, or the 25 and 50 milligram groups, saw a decrease in testosterone, total and free, and they also saw luteinizing hormone decrease and IGF-1 decrease, which means that if you're running 25 to 50 milligrams of testosterone a week, you're going to see a decrease in serum testosterone levels. You're going to be running on less than what your body naturally produces. If you're in the normal range, that's going to result in muscle atrophy or muscle loss a lot of the time, and a host of other issues. Now, the results for groups C, D, and E saw an increase in total testosterone. They saw an increase in free testosterone. They also saw an increase in IGF-1 levels. In addition to the blood work that they did, they also tested fat-free mass and fat mass before and after the study. And what they concluded was the 300 milligram a week group saw a 5.2 kilo increase in lean mass. The 600 milligram a week group saw a 7.9 kilo increase in lean mass. Then when it looked at fat mass, the 300 milligram a week group saw a 0.5 kilo decrease in fat mass. The 600 milligram a week group saw a 1.1 kilo decrease in fat mass. They also looked at other things like the muscle volume increase in the thighs, the quadriceps. They looked at the leg press strength, the leg press power. They also looked at the hemoglobin levels, the plasma HDL, otherwise known as good cholesterol or high density lipoprotein. They also looked at acne. The thigh muscle volume in the 300 milligram per week group saw an 84 cubic centimeter increase. A 600 milligram a week group saw a 126 cubic centimeter increase. The quadriceps muscle volume in the 300 milligram per week group saw a 43 centimeter cubic increase. A 600 milligram a week group saw a 68 cubic centimeter increase. The leg press strength in the 300 milligram per week group saw a 72.2 kilo increase. The 600 milligram per week group saw a 76.5 kilogram increase. The leg power in the 300 milligram per week group saw a 38.6 watt increase. The 600 milligram per week group saw a 48.1 watt increase. The hemoglobin levels of the 300 milligram per week group were 6.1. The 600 milligram per week group saw a 14.2 gram per liter increase in hemoglobin. When it comes to plasma HDL cholesterol or the good cholesterol, the 300 milligram per week group saw a 5.7 milligram per deciliter decrease. The 600 milligrams of testosterone a week group saw an 8.4 milligram per deciliter decrease. They were the results of the 300 versus 600. The other ones also saw changes, but they're not really worth noting. But what I'm getting at here is if you look at the effects that we want from the exogenous hormones, aka the muscle growth, the accrual of lean mass, the increase in strength, all those sort of things, versus the side effects or the effects that we don't want, aka the decrease in HDL cholesterol or good cholesterol, the increase in hemoglobin, things like that. The 300 milligram per week group seems far more ideal when you weigh up the pros versus the cons, as opposed to looking at the 600 milligram per week group. Now, it's worth noting too that additional increase in lean mass between the 300 and 600 milligram per week group might not actually be lean mass. Like, the majority of that additional accrual of lean mass might actually just be water retention from the drug, because as you increase testosterone levels or as you increase the dosage of exogenous testosterone, it carries along with it more intramuscular water weight. What this study suggests is that there is a point of diminishing returns. As you increase the dosage, initially you do see an increase in the effects that we want, an increase in the skeletal muscle hypertrophy, or the increase in lean body mass, I should say. You see a increase in strength and bone density and decrease in fat mass, but you reach a certain point of diminishing returns where you just see an increase in the unwanted side effects and the negative health implications that are associated with anabolic steroid use. Not to say that you're not going to build more muscle with 600 milligrams of testosterone a week, but is it worth it if the negative health effects greatly outweigh the negative health effects associated with 300 milligrams of testosterone a week? Not to mention, you're going from 70 milligrams of testosterone a week at most to either 300 or 600 milligrams of testosterone a week. You're going to see phenomenal results with either dosage. Why wouldn't you take the more conservative dosage? If you don't need 600 milligrams to see the results, why would you take 600 milligrams? It's like going to a coffee shop and ordering a coffee. You wouldn't order 5 coffees because it gives you 5 times the amount of caffeine as a normal coffee. If you never drink coffee, you probably have a heart attack. Not really, but you're going to get a response out of 300 milligrams of testosterone a week. Use the 300 milligrams of testosterone a week. Don't be an idiot and use 600 milligrams of testosterone a week if you haven't ever used the compound before. It's just nonsensical. It doesn't make sense. Second reason why 500 to 600 milligrams of testosterone a week is a stupid first cycle is you're going to accumulate more scar tissue throughout that cycle if you're using more compound. So there's a few things that go into how much scar tissue you're going to accumulate throughout a cycle. One of them being the size of the needle tip that you choose to use. The other one being the amount of compound that you use. If you're using more overall compound, then you're going to accrue more scar tissue. So if you're using 300 milligrams a week versus 600 milligrams a week, it's a difference between 1 mil or 2 mils a week. And it might not sound like much in the short term, but in the long term, at the 10th cycle that you're doing, the amount of scar tissue that you have is going to matter, and the amount of solution that you use per cycle is going to have an impact. So start with the more conservative approach. Take 1 mil a week, take 250 to 300 milligrams of testosterone a week, and heck, split the dosage up into smaller amounts and dose it more frequently throughout the week to create more stable serum levels of testosterone. And not only that, backload an insulin syringe. So use a 27 or a 29 gauge insulin syringe, pull the plunger out of the back, be very sterile when you do this, and backload the syringe, and then put the plunger back in, turn it upside down, flick it so the bubbles go to the top of the syringe, put push the air out, and then you've got a backloaded insulin syringe, which is going to cause far less scar tissue. Reason number 3, testosterone is a precursor to DHT and estradiol, which means as testosterone increases, so does aromatization to these two hormones. So if you have increased levels of estradiol or increased levels of DHT, you're going to exhibit side effects associated with these increased levels of these hormones. Increased levels of estradiol typically result in increase in the size of the mammary glands. Now, DHT related side effects include hair loss, increased size of the prostate gland, potential increase in risk of prostate cancer, and you've got a host of other issues too, like you've got deepening of the voice, you've got increase in acne, which can be either estradiol or DHT induced. And so there's a lot of issues that can arise from this. And a lot of people would just say, well, take an aromatase inhibitor. But the problem with taking an aromatase inhibitor is this will not only lower your estradiol, but it will also negatively impact your HDL cholesterol, so your high density lipoprotein. It'll throw out your triglycerides completely. And then you've got a host of other issues that you have to worry about. It's far better to counteract the side effects by being wiser with your choice of dosage. And that's why I also advocate 300 milligrams of testosterone versus 600 milligrams of testosterone, is because it not only increases the quality of gains and decreases the risks associated, but you don't have to stack the drug with other drugs to counteract certain side effects. That's the big advantage of it. Now, some individuals might have to unfortunately even lower the dose below 300 milligrams a week, depending on how much they aromatize, because we all aromatize at differing rates. But the important thing to understand is that as you increase dosage, aromatization to these secondary hormones increases. Reason number 4 is your body only has so much mileage. I hate creating analogies between cars and the human body, but it works very, very well in illustrating what I'm trying to say here. So I'm going to do just that. If you take a car, for example, a brand new flash Audi or a flash Mercedes, and you drive it off the lot, you can flog it, you can drag race it, you can drive it everywhere. It handles really well, nothing breaks down. But if you take that same car 30 years later and try to do the stuff that you did with it then, it's probably going to fall apart. You're probably going to run into a lot of issues. Engine might overheat. There might be a few other issues. And the thing that I'm getting at here is there's wear and tear associated with abusing things. If you abuse a vehicle, if you abuse a car, if you abuse anything, like there's moving parts in the car, in particular the engine. And over time, these moving parts wear down, wear away, and it causes a host of issues in the vehicle. The same thing happens in the human body. The human body is only good for so much abuse. It's why you can get away with partying, doing recreational drugs, or at least most people can in their 20s and their 30s. And in this instance, using exogenous hormones. If you abuse them, if you misuse them too much in your earlier years, it's going to catch up with you in the long run, and you're going to have a host of issues as you get older. And if you want to be in this game for as long as possible, and if you want to milk out as much as you can from using anabolics while also mitigating and minimizing the negative health risks associated with using them, then you want to take the most conservative, most long-term approach, and that is lower, slower, longer. So use a smaller dose, do it over a longer period of time, have planned out breaks, and just be smart about it. If you want a car to last long, you don't flog it 24/7. You might reduce how much you drive it around. You look after it. You make sure it's serviced on time. You wash the car. You polish it. You do all this stuff to ensure it stays in good nick as long as possible. Treat your body the same way. Treat your body with respect. If you're going to use exogenous hormones, understand that you're playing a game of Russian roulette, and the best way to mitigate the unwanted effects is to just have the conservative approach. Reason number 5 is the cost associated with it. The more you use, the more you spend. It's that simple. And even though anabolic steroids aren't as expensive as the general population like to think they are, or what they might think they are, it still costs money at the end of the day. And you should always be concerned about being smart with your money. You don't want to blow your money unnecessarily, because that's just a poor way to approach budgeting. And it's a poor way to get ahead and save money. So if you're going to use anabolics, take the conservative approach. Waste less money in the process. You're going to get more results in the long run, less negative health effects, and you're going to have more money in your pocket at the end of the day, which means that you can put that money in either investing or saving for a house deposit or putting toward a car or a camera or a nice pair of shoes that you want to buy. So think about that at the end of the day. The cost is still a variable to consider, and it's a pretty important variable at that, because at the end of the day, how you spend your money will dictate what you're able to achieve in life a lot of the time. And most people that train in the gym that are doing bodybuilding don't have a lot of money, so I'd probably want to take the conservative approach if I were them. So if you were to say run 300 milligrams of testosterone a week for 16 weeks versus 600 milligrams of testosterone a week for 16 weeks, you're not only halving the cost of your cycle, you're probably lowering it even more, because if you run 600 milligrams of testosterone a week, chances are you're probably going to have to run an aromatase inhibitor, so you need to factor in the additional costs of that. So you need to factor in all these other additional expenses that might be associated with running a higher dosage of testosterone. Alright, so to conclude the video, guys, what do I personally think is an appropriate first time cycle? I personally think 300 milligrams of testosterone a week is more than sufficient. You're going to achieve the greatest amount of results with the least amount of side effects comparative to running 500 or 600 milligrams of testosterone a week for the same duration. Even though you're going to accrue an additional 1 to 2 kilos of lean mass in that 16-week phase by doubling the dosage, it's not worth the exponential increase in the negative health effects and implications associated with running exogenous testosterone. So that's my 2 cents on the matter, guys. Just build that extra 2 kilos of lean mass in your second cycle. That way you conserve your overall health and well-being. You also spend less money in the process. That's it for the video, guys. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to give it a like. And if you have any suggestions for future content, please don't forget to leave or drop a comment down below outlining what you'd like to see in the future. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification too so you get notified for any new uploads, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out.